Have you ever looked up into the sky and thought that you could glimpse a faraway castle nestling there amongst the clouds? Perhaps a turret-shaped thrust, the curve of a roof, or the sun gently glinting through the cotton candy structure gave an impression of a building filled with windows. Pareidolia is when people see shapes or familiar patterns in a random stimulus. For example, you might see an angry face in that coffee stain you made when you accidentally spilled your drink. Psychiatrists use pareidolia when they expose patients to the Rorschach test. That is, they will show the patient an ink blot and ask them to describe what they see. It helps with understanding the patient's personality and state of mind. If the patient sees a harmonious and calm picture, two lovebirds for example, the physician can assume that the patient is happy and calm. An evil monster on the attack, however, would indicate that the patient is nervous, anxious, or upset. Pareidolia also describes the instance when people hear hidden messages in music. Some people are more sensitive to pareidolia than others, and it has been linked with creativity. Many artists use it in their practice and for inspiration when painting, drawing, or sculpting. Author Diane Wynne Jones wrote the novel Howl's Moving Castle in the early 1980s. The book describes the amazing adventures of a wizard named Howl, who lives in a flying castle that travels through space and time. Could it have been based on pareidolia? Perhaps Diane was inspired by something strange that she saw in the sky. The Japanese animation artists at Studio Ghibli made a film based on her book. No coincidence, perhaps, considering the events that unfolded many years later in nearby China. There has not been much research surrounding instances of mass pareidolia, but could this have been the case in China? Could the first incidents of mass pareidolia explain a strange illusion that occurred there in recent years? It was a cloudy day in Guangdong province, and nothing unusual was happening. That is, until a rare and unusual sight was spotted in the sky. A group of strange-looking buildings was seen hovering in the clouds. Resembling a group of skyscrapers, the mysterious shapes took on the appearance of a floating city. Hundreds of people reported seeing this city in the clouds. The strange occurrence was captured on video, and the mysterious skyscrapers were present floating on the horizon for a few minutes before gradually fading away. And this was not a singular occurrence. In fact, the elusive city has appeared at least 4 times in recent years. But what could explain this extraordinary event? Could it be a time warp? A glimpse of the future where floating cities adorn the sky? Perhaps a tear in the fabric of time reveals a future where the pull of gravity has lessened, and humankind has built a series of magnificent floating cities, the wonder of these incredible feats of engineering fleetingly revealing their future presence in the here and now. Perhaps aliens are living right above our heads, cloaked in a vulnerable shield of invisibility, which sometimes fades to allow the reality of wonder to seep through. One explanation is that the image of the buildings is caused by an optical illusion known as Fata Morgana. Fata Morgana is the name for a type of mirage. This unusual occurrence is named after the goddess, witch, and sorceress Morgan Le Fay. She was an ally and protector of King Arthur at Camelot. The mirage of this type has been so named because, unlike an ordinary mirage, it appears above the horizon. It often takes on the form of a fairy castle or a boat. These were thought to have been manifested by witches or sorceresses as lures, tempting sailors off course in order to seal their fatal doom. In order to understand how a Fata Morgana mirage happens, you need to know the following. Where there are layers of air at various temperatures, the light passing through the layers becomes distorted or bent. It is then projected into the sky as a kind of cinemascope or projection of what is found below it. So, the image of a boat, for example, that is in reality safely moored on land, can appear to be floating up high in the sky, nestling among the clouds on the horizon, far out to sea. How many sailors' wives and lovers were ever filled with false hope by Fata Morgana mirages, as an image of what may have appeared to be their loved one's boat returning across the sea was projected onto the horizon. The Fata Morgana mirage needs 3 elements in order to work. The first is calm weather, the second is an atmospheric duct, and the third is thermal inversion. The presence of all 3 of these elements is very rare, and that is why the Fata Morgana mirage is so unusual. Elsewhere in the world, in places like India and Africa, there have been similar sightings of cities in the sky, one of which lasted longer than an hour. These may be linked to the Vimana. Vimana are flying ships or palaces that have been described in ancient sacred Hindu texts. These kind of floating city phenomena are even described in the Bible. For example, Revelations 21:2 states, "And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride for her husband." Of course, there are real floating cities, but not all of these are in the sky. Almost everyone has heard of the famous European city of Venice in Italy. Dating back to the 6th century, Venice was built by refugees who originally camped on the 118 islands in the region after fleeing the Lombards. Around the same time as the Goths and Vandals, the Lombards got their name from long beards. This was because the goddess Frigg, or Freya, advised the warring Winili people that the Winili women should become soldiers, tie their hair in front of their faces like beards, and march beside the men in battle. The tribe then became known as Lombards. After destroying the Gepids in 567 AD, the Lombard king Alboin and his soldiers invaded Italy, which was underpopulated, having been largely devastated by the Gothic War of 535. The foundations of Venice are made from limestone plates, placed on top of tree trunks that have been drilled deep down into the sandy soil until they hit a layer of dense clay. Venice is slowly sinking, and the annual floods get deeper every year. So if you get the opportunity, it would be a good idea to visit this most spectacular, ancient and beautiful city as soon as you can. Another example of a city floating on water can be found at Makoko, Lagos, Nigeria, in Africa. Makoko is the world's largest floating city. It can be found near the Yaba suburb of Lagos's mainland and is home to some 85,000 people. Established as a fishing village in the late 19th century and built on stilts, Makoko is connected to the mainland by a series of bridges. In 2012, the Lagos state government tried to erase the city with mass evictions and demolitions by fire. Although this made some 30,000 people homeless, the city on the water survived. The resident children learn to sail from the age of 2 or 3, and so they have an early start in learning the skills they need to navigate across the water. There is even a school built on stilts. Imagine an enormous city without any cars or hint of dry land. What an incredible sight that must be. Another example of houses in the sky can be found in the ancestral home of the Snoqualmie people in the United States of America. At Snoqualmie Valley, western Washington, there is a forest. In 2004, Peter Nelson and his wife Judy purchased 4 acres of land in this woodland location. They decided to take a walk through the forest at night, and it was here that Peter had a vision. As a beam of moonlight flowed through the treescape, illuminating a great trunk of Sitka spruce, Peter realized he needed to build a treehouse high up in the sky. The very next day, he began designing the Temple of the Blue Moon. This magnificent treehouse sparked the building of 6 more, which led to the creation of the real-life treehouse village that is Treehouse Point. Is it a coincidence that the original indigenous people of the Snoqualmie Valley believed in the creation myth Moon the Transformer? The story of Moon the Transformer, as recorded by Arthur C. Ballard, told to him by Snoqualmie Charlie, taken from the Meadowbrook Farm Preserve website. There were 2 sisters from Tolt. They decided to go to the city of Snoqualmie to dig fern roots. When they were done, they decided to sleep there for the night. That night, the 2 sisters were looking up into the sky. They looked at the stars and wished they could marry one. While sleeping that night, they were taken to the land of the sky people. When they woke up, they saw that they were married to the 2 stars they had been looking at. They lived there for a long time. Every day, the men went out to hunt, and the sisters stayed and dug up fern roots. One day, the older sister became pregnant and gave birth to a boy named Moon. After a while, the sisters missed their home and family. One day, while digging for roots, they realized if they dug far enough, they could see the world below. They decided they could go home this way. One sister would dig, while the other would watch baby Moon and weave a cedar rope. After 15 days, the rope reached the top of Mount Si. They climbed down to the earth. All of this time their family had missed them and had sent the bird people to try and find the sisters. Everyone was happy that the two sisters had returned and were surprised to see Moon. To celebrate, the sisters made their ladder into a swing. Everyone had sport on it by swinging from Mount Si to Rattlesnake Ridge. While all of their family was celebrating, Dog Salmon came and stole the baby. Everyone tried to find him, but it was Blue Jay who was able to find Moon, who was now grown up and had children of his own. He told Blue Jay he would come home when his children were grown. When Moon returned, he had a special power. He was now Moon the Transformer. Moon the Transformer changed everything into what it is today. When he came to the Great Fish Weir, where he had been stolen as a baby, he turned it into Snoqualmie Falls. From here, Moon the Transformer created the various people and all the rivers as they are now. Treehouse villages are also located in the Dominican Republic. Throughout the world's forests, indigenous people have made elevated sky villages their home. One such example may be found deep in the Indonesian rainforest. The Korowai tribe have been building their dwellings high up in the canopy, as high as 140 feet, for centuries. The houses are all built entirely by hand, and each one can accommodate up to 12 people. The Korowai believe that high altitudes protect them from evil spirits, and they are certainly kept safely away from pesky disease-ridden mosquitoes, who prefer low-flying up to heights of no more than 25 feet. The Korowai's elevated position also keeps them away from the risk posed by local flooding. Whatever the explanation for the mysterious and wonderful visions of cities in the clouds, seen by hundreds, and that appear for a number of minutes or hours and then vanish, it can safely be said that humankind has always held a fascination for living in the clouds.